Greetings to you all in the name of Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So finally we came to end of this year. So we are going to step into new year. So before we are going to step into a new year, so I want you to recollect what God has done throughout this 2020. So before I share a few words, I like to read one verse from Bible, that is Deuteronomy chapter 8 verse 2. I would like to read. And you shall remember that the Lord your God led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness to humble you and test you to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or not. So here, instead of 40 years, I like to put 2020, and I would like to read it again. And you shall remember that the Lord your God led you all the way this 2020 in this wilderness to humble you and test you to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or not. So when we see here, as we came to end of this year, so let's recollect what God has done in our life. So there are times we forgot to pray this year. And there are times we forgot to read Bible. And there are times we miss service. There are times we disobeyed God. There are times we went away from God. And there are times we committed sin. But when we see, even though we forgot a lot of things, God never forgotten us. God always remember us. So that means we always remembered by God whatever we have done. Whatever the things we did all these years, God never forgot about us. So when we see here, we have witnessed some of greatest disasters in the world. So when we see this 2020, we saw a bushfire in Australia. We saw a COVID pandemic entered the world. And also we saw that churches has been closed, and we saw that lot of cyclones, and we saw that a lot of accidents, and we saw that lot of crimes, and we saw that lot of suicides and murders. But when we see here today, you and I still alive. Why? Because it is not because of our qualification. It is not because of our status. It is not because of our education, but it is because of God who remember us. Because you and I remembered by God. We all remembered by God. That's why we are still see miracles in our life. Though we went away from God, though we went away from his presence, though we fall in sin, though we keep on committing sin, we still see miracles in our life. We see still we see deliverance. We still see healing in our life. We still see blessings in our life. Why? Because we all are remembered by God. So when we see in Bible, we find a lot of things. The people of Israel, they were in bondage 400 years. And we see in Exodus chapter, we see that God remembered his promise and he sent Moses to deliver people of Israel from their bondage. Today, even when we see the humanity, God sent his only begotten son to deliver us from our sinfulness, to deliver us from our problems, from our weakness, from our addiction, from our weakness, from our sickness. God sent his only begotten son in our life. When we see here the Samson, the strongest person in the Bible, and he was chosen to deliver his own people. God has a particular plan in Samson's life. And we know that a victorious life in Samson. We can observe a victorious things he did. Once he killed a lion with his bare hands. And once he killed enemies, a jawbone of donkey. But when we see the end of the life, end of the Samson story, we saw that he lost his strength. He lost his track. He went away from God. He disobeyed God. He keep on committing sin. And what happened? He became blind and he was chained in the midst of enemies. You know, the Samson was praying like this. Once, remember me and give me strength. So when we see the Samson story, he did everything against God. He disobeyed, he committing sin. But still then, he was praying, remember me. You know what happened? God remembered the Samson and he gave strength to Samson. And we know that he killed a lot of people in the final. So when we see here, even though Samson, he went away from God, God still remembered Samson. Today, you may think that you went away from God because of your addiction. You went far from God because of your sinful life. But still then, you are remembered by God. God never forgot about you. God never forgotten your life. God still remembered you. It doesn't mean whatever the sin you are committing. It doesn't mean whatever the life you are living. It always God who remember you. And we see here another example we see in Bible. The time of crucifixion, there was two thieves beside Jesus. And one thief, he was praying like this. So remember me when your kingdom is come. And Jesus said, and today you will be in paradise with me. So when we see here, this thief, he never went to church. This thief, he never prayed. This thief never worshipped God. This thief, he did not even took baptism. This thief never know about anything about Christ. But he was praying only one thing, remember me. But you know what? Jesus did not say that, you read Bible, I will remember you. Jesus did not say that, you go to church every Sunday, I will remember you. But Jesus said, today you will be in paradise with me. Though he was a thief, though he was a rebel, though he was a murderer, Jesus remembered this thief. When we see in our life, even we are those sinners, even though we are committing a lot of things against God, even though we are going away from God, even though we are addicted to worldly stuff, still we are remembered by God. How can we say that? So when we see here, this year, a lot of people died because of a lot of reasons. Maybe it's a COVID, maybe it's a accidents, maybe it's a disease, maybe it's a suicide. Many people, they are taking one life. Many people, they are died. But when we see in our life, today, you and I, we are still alive. Why? Because we are remembered by God. We are remembered by God. That's why we can see a lot of healings in our life. We can see a lot of deliverance in our life. We can see a lot of blessings in our life. So, even though our friends may forget us sometimes, even though our friends forgot to wish on your birthday, even though your friends forgot to wish you on a New Year or Christmas, but God never forgot about you. He never leave you nor forsake you. So my friend, as we are going to step in a new year, so I like to recollect the things what God has done in your life throughout this 2020. Jesus has done a lot of things. So there are things, there are stuff we remember what God has done. It may be healing, it may be blessing, but there are things we may forget what God has done. So as we are going to step into a new year, so I like to remind the things God has done throughout this year. So one thing I like to tell you that even though the people may forget you, even though the world may forget you, even though your best friends may forget you, but God, the God who came to this world and died for you and me, He will never forget you nor forsake you. May God bless you all.